The Passion According to G.H. by Clarice Lispector. First chapter.
I keep looking, trying to understand, trying to give what I have gone through to someone else, and I don't know who, but I don't want to be alone with that experience. I don't know what to do with it. I'm terrified of that profound disorganization. I'm not sure I even believe in what happened to me. Did something happen, and did I, because I didn't know how to experience it, end up experiencing something else instead? It's that something that I'd like to call disorganization, and then I'd have the confidence to venture forth because I would know where to come back to the prior organization. I prefer to call it disorganization because I don't want to ground myself in what I experienced. In that grounding I would lose the world as it was for me before, and I know that I don't have the capacity for another one. If I go ahead with that grounding and consider myself true, I will be lost because I won't know where to set up my new way of being. If I go ahead with my fragmentary visions, the whole world will have to change for me to fit into it. Something's missing that once was essential to me and is so no longer. I don't need it any more, as though I had lost a third leg that until then kept me from walking, but made me a stable tripod. It's that third leg that's now missing, and I've gone back to being someone I never was. I've gone back to having something I never had before, just my two legs. I know that I can walk only when I have two legs, but I sense the irrelevant loss of the third one, and it horrifies me. It was that third leg that made me able to find myself, and without even having to look. Am I disorganized because I have lost something I didn't even need? In this new cowardice of mine, cowardice is what happened to me most recently, my greatest adventure. It is so wide a field that only great courage enables me to accept it. In my new cowardice, which is like waking up in the morning in a stranger's house, I don't know if I'll have the courage simply to set out. It's hard to lose oneself, so hard that I'll probably soon work out a way of finding myself, even if finding myself is again the lie that I live on. Up to now, finding myself was having a ready-made person idea and mounting myself inside it. I incarnated myself inside that set-up person and didn't even sense the great construction project that living was. The person idea that I had came from that third leg of mine, the one that held me fast to the ground. But now, will I be freer? No, I know that I'm still not sensing freely, that once again I'm thinking because my goal is to find, and that for safety's sake I'll call the moment that I come across a way out finding. Why don't I have the courage to find just a way in? Oh, I know that I have gone in, but I've been afraid because I don't know where that way in leads, and I've never before let myself go without knowing where. Yesterday, however, I lost my human constitution for hours and hours. If I'm brave, I'll let myself stay lost. But I'm afraid of new things, and I'm afraid to experience what I don't understand. I always want the guarantee of at least thinking that I understand. I don't know how to just give myself over to disorientation. How do I explain that my greatest fear is precisely in relation to being, and that there is nonetheless no other way to go? How to explain that my greatest fear is precisely the fear of having to live out whatever happens? How to explain that I cannot bear to look out only because life is not at all what I thought it was, and is in fact something other, as though I had known before what it was? Why is it that just looking is so greatly disorganizing and disillusioning too? But what could I become disillusioned about? If I was barely able to stand my merely constructed organization without at least sensing. Maybe disillusionment is the fear of no longer fitting into a system? It could, however, be said that he is very happy who finally experiences disillusionment. What I was before wasn't good for me, but it was from that ungood that I put together something better. I had put together hope. From my own ungood I had created a future good, and I am now afraid that my new outlook won't make sense. But why don't I just let myself be guided by whatever happens? I shall have to run the holy risk of chance and replace fate with probability. But are the discoveries of infants like those made in a laboratory where one finds what one will? Was it then only when I became an adult that I started to fear and grew the third leg? Can I, as an adult, have the childlike courage to lose myself? To lose oneself is to go looking, with no sense of what to do with what you might find. The 2 walking feet minus that extra third one that holds a person down. And I want to be held down. I don't know what to do with the horrifying freedom that can destroy me. But while I was held down, was I happy? Or was there, and there was, an uncanny, restless something in my happy prison routine? Or was there, and there was, that throbbing something to which I was so accustomed that I thought throbbing was the same as being a person? Isn't that it? Yes, that too. That too. I become so scared when I realize that over a period of hours I lost my human constitution. I don't know if I'll have another one to replace the lost one with. I know that I'll need to take care not to surreptitiously use a new third leg that can grow back in me easily as weed, and then call that protective leg a truth. But I also don't know what form to give to what happened to me, and for me nothing exists unless I give it a form. And what if the reality is precisely that nothing has existed? Maybe nothing happened to me. I can understand only what happens to me. But only what I understand happens. What do I know about the rest? The rest hasn't existed. Maybe nothing has existed. Maybe I have merely undergone a great slow disintegration. And my struggle against that disintegration is just that, is just trying to give it a form. A form gives contours to chaos, gives a construct to amorphous substance. The vision of an infinite flash is a madman's vision. But if I cut that flash into pieces and spread those pieces over days and famines, then it will no longer be perdition and madness. It will be humanized life again. Humanized life. I had humanized life too much. But what shall I do now? Shall I hold onto the whole vision, even though it means holding onto an incomprehensible truth? Or shall I give form to nothingness and let that be my way of integrating my very disintegration into myself? But I am so poorly prepared to understand. Before, whenever I tried, my limitations gave me a sensation of physical discomfort. In me, any effort to think immediately runs up against my head. Early on, I had to recognize coldly the obstacle that my meager intelligence represented and reject setting out on any path. I knew that it was my fate to think little. Reasoning power kept me fast inside my own skin. How then could I now start thinking? And maybe only thought could save me. I'm afraid of passion. Now that I have to save tomorrow, that I have to have a form because I don't sense that I have the strength to stay disorganized, now that faithfully I shall have to frame that monstrous, infinite flesh, and cut it into pieces that something the size of my mouth can take in, and the size of my eyes' vision. Now that I shall faithfully succumb to the necessity of form that comes from my fear of being unlimited, then let me at least have the courage to let that form by itself, like a crust that hardens on its own, a fiery nebula that cools into earth. And let me have the great courage to resist the temptation to invent a form. The effort that I shall now make to let a sense, whatever it may be, to rise to the surface, that effort could be made easier if I pretended to write for someone. But I'm afraid to start writing to be understood by that imaginary someone. I'm afraid I'll start making a sense with the same meek madness that up to yesterday was my healthy way of fitting into a system. Will I have to have the courage to use an undefended heart and go on speaking to nothing and no one, as when a child thinks about nothingness, and to run the risk of being crushed by chance? I don't understand what I saw. I don't even know if I saw, since my eyes ended up not being separate from what I saw, only in an unexpected rippling of the lines, only in an anomaly in the uninterrupted continuity of my culture, did I for an instant experience life-giving death, that purified death that made me sort through me the forbidding weft of life. Saying the name of life is forbidden, and I almost said it. I almost couldn't disentangle myself from its weft, which would have been the destruction of my age inside me. All sudden understanding is, in the last analysis, the revelation of a clear non-understanding. Every moment of finding is the losing of oneself. Perhaps I experienced an understanding that was as complete as an ignoring, and I shall emerge from it as intact and innocent as before. Any comprehension on my part will never be equal to that understanding, for I can reach only the height of living. The only level on which I function is the level of living. Only now I know of a secret, which I am already forgetting. Oh, I feel that I am already forgetting. To rediscover it now, I would have to die all over again, and knowing it again could be the murder of my human soul. And I don't want to. What could still save me would be for me to deliver myself over to that new ignorance. That would be possible. For all the while that I am struggling to know, my new ignorance, which is forgetting, has become sacred. I am the priestess of a secret that I no longer know, and I serve out of blissful ignorance. I found out something I was unable to understand. My lips became sealed, and I retained only the incomprehensible fragments of a ritual. Although, for the first time, I feel that my forgetting is, in the last analysis, of a piece with the world. Oh, and I don't want in the least to have anything explained to me that would have to be made to go beyond itself to be explained. I don't want anything explained to me that would require human validation again for its interpretation. Life and death have been mine, and I was a monstrosity. Mine was the courage of the sleepwalker who simply acts. During those hours of perdition, I had the courage neither to compose nor to organize, and especially the courage not to look ahead. Up to then I had not been brave enough to let myself be guided by what I don't know toward what I don't know. My foresight preconditioned what I would see. It wasn't the foresight of seeing. It already had my care's dimensions about it. My foresight closed the world to me. Until, for a few hours, I stopped. And my God, I got what I didn't want. It wasn't a river valley I walked along. I had always imagined that discovery would be fertile and humid, like river valleys. I never thought it would be you. I never thought it would be the immense disencounter that it was. Is my sacrifice for continuing to be human just forgetting? I shall now be able to recognize in the common faces of some people that they have forgotten, and that they no longer know that they have forgotten what they have forgotten. I saw it. I know I did, because I didn't give it its meaning. I know that I did because I don't understand it. I know I did because what I saw isn't good for anything. Listen, I'm going to have to talk because I don't know what to do with that moment of living that I experienced. Worse yet, I don't like what I saw. It explodes my day-to-day life. I apologize for putting this all on you. I would have much preferred seeing something better. Take what I experienced. Free me from my useless vision from my useless sin. I'm so frightened that I shall be able to accept the notion that I have lost myself only if I imagine that someone is holding my hand. Putting my hand in someone else's has always been my definition of happiness. Before I fall asleep, often, in that small struggle not to lose consciousness and go into the greater world, often, before I get up the courage to go into the vastness of sleep, I pretend that someone has my hand in theirs, and then I go to that enormous absence of form that is sleep. And when even after that I don't have courage, I dream. Going to sleep is very much like the way that I now have of going to my freedom. Giving myself over to something I don't understand is placing myself on the brink of nothingness. It is going just by going, like a blind woman lost in a field. That supernatural thing that is living. Living that has tamed and made familiar. That courageous thing that is for me to give myself over and is like reaching out a hand to God's ghostly hand and entering that formless thing that is a paradise. A paradise that I don't want. During the time I'm writing and speaking, I'm going to have to pretend that someone is holding my hand. Oh, at least at the beginning. Only at the beginning. As soon as I can do without it, I'll go on alone. In the meantime, I need to hold this hand of yours. Even if I can't picture your face and your eyes and your mouth. But even though it is cut off from a body, this hand doesn't scare me. Its creation comes from an idea of love such that it is as if the hand were really attached to a body. And if I don't see it, it's because I am unable to love more. I am not up to picturing a whole person, because I am not a whole person myself. And how can I imagine a face if I don't know what kind of expression I need on it? As soon as I can get along without your warm hand, I'll go on alone, and in terror. That terror will be my responsibility until the metamorphosis is complete and the terror is transformed into clarity. Not the clarity born of a desire for beauty and morality, like the kind I looked for before, even without knowing it, but rather the natural clarity of what exists. And it is that natural clarity that terrifies me, even though I know that the terror is only myself coming face to face with things. In the meantime, I am inventing your presence, just as one day I shall also to be unable to let myself die alone. Dying is the greatest peril of all. I won't be able to pass over into death and put my first foot into my first self-absence. In that last and so first an hour, too, I shall invent your nameless presence, and with you I shall start to die, until I am able on my own not to exist, and then I'll let you go. For now I have you, and your warm, unknown life is my only internal organization. I, who without your hand would feel unattached within the enormous space that I have discovered. The space of Truth? But the fact is that truth has never made sense to me. Truth doesn't make sense. That's why I was afraid of it, and still am. Forsaken as I am, I give everything over to you, so you can do something pleasant with it. If I talk to you, will I frighten you and lose you? But if I don't, I'll lose myself, and in losing myself, I lose you anyhow. Truth doesn't make sense. The hugeness of the world makes me shrink. What I probably asked for and finally found still ended up leaving me unprepared, like a child walking alone across the earth, so unprepared that only my love of all the universe could console me and satisfy me, only a love such that the very egg cell of things would resonate with what I call love, with what in fact I am merely naming without knowing its name. Could it have been love that I saw? But what kind of love is it that is as blind as an egg cell? Is that what it was? That terror? Was it love? A love so neutral that... No, I don't want to talk to myself anymore. To talk would be to precipitate a sense, just like making yourself suddenly stable with the paralyzing security of that third leg. Or am I simply putting off starting to talk? Why am I saying nothing and just playing for time? Because I am afraid. I need courage to go forth with an attempt to concretize what I feel. It's as though I possessed a coin and didn't know what country it was good in. I shall need courage to do what I'm going to do, to talk, and to run the risk of the enormous surprise that I am going to feel at the poverty of what I say. As soon as I say it, I'll have to add, that isn't it, that isn't it, that isn't it at all. But I'll also need not to be afraid of being foolish. I've always gone for the less rather than the more, for fear of seeming foolish along the way. And also there's the wounding of one's dignity. I'm putting off the moment when I have to talk. Is it because I'm afraid? And because I don't have a word to say? I don't have a word to say. Why don't I just stay quiet then? But if I don't force myself to talk, silence will forever engulf me in waves. Word and form will be the plank on top of which I shall float over billions of silence. And if I keep putting off starting, it's also because I have no guide. Other travelers' accounts give me few facts about the trip. All their information is horribly incomplete. I feel that an incipient freedom is gradually taking me over, for never before today have I had so little fear of lacking good taste. I just wrote billions of silence, which I wouldn't have said before, because I have always respected beauty and its intrinsic decorum. I have said billions of silence. My heart humbly bows, and I accept it. Have I in effect abandoned the whole system of good taste? But is that my only gain? How imprisoned I must have been, that I feel myself freer just because I no longer fear a lack of aesthetics. I still don't foresee what else I may have gained. Maybe I'll learn of it little by little. For now, the first timid pleasure that I feel is being able to say that I have lost my fear of the ugly, and that loss is a very great good. It is a delight. I want to know what more I've gained by losing. As of now, I don't know. Only in reliving it will I experience it. But how can I relive it if I don't have a normal word to say? Shall I have to make words as though I were creating what happened to me? I am going to create what happened to me. Only because living isn't tellable, living isn't livable, I shall have to create upon life. And without lying. Yes to creation, no to lying. Creation isn't imagination. It is running the huge risk of coming face to face with reality.
Understanding is a creation. It's my only way. I shall have to painstakingly translate telegraph signals, translate the unknown into a language that I don't know, and not even understand what the signals amount to. I shall speak in that sleepwalker's language that if I were awake wouldn't even be a language. And I'll create the truth of what happened to me. Oh, it will be more a graphism than a writing, since I shall be engaging in reproduction rather than expression. I need to express myself less all the time. Have I lost that as well? No, even when I did sculpture, I was only reproducing, and only with my hands. Will I stay lost amid the silence of the signals? I will, for I know what I'm like. I never learned to look without needing more than just to see. I know that I will terrify myself like someone who was blind and finally opened her eyes and saw. But saw what? A mute, incomprehensible triangle. Couldn't that person consider herself blinder still for seeing only an incomprehensible triangle? I ask myself, if I look into the darkness with a magnifying glass, will I see more than darkness? The glass won't disperse the darkness. It will only reveal it all the more. And if I look at brightness with a magnifying glass, I shall see, with a shock, only greater brightness. I have seen, but am as blind as before, because I saw an incomprehensible triangle. Unless I also transform myself into a triangle that will see in the incomprehensible triangle my own source and repetition. I'm stalling. I know that everything I say is just to put it off. To put off the moment when I'll have to start talking, knowing that there is nothing more for me to say. I'm putting off my silence. Have I been putting off silence for my whole life? But now, in my disparagement of the words, perhaps I'll finally be able to start talking. The telegraph signals, the world bristling with antennas, and here am I receiving the signal. I'll be able to do only a phonetic transcription. 3,000 years ago I lost my head, and all that was left were phonetic fragments of me. I'm blinder than before. I did see, I really did, and I was terrified by the raw truth of a world whose greatest horror is that it is so alive that for me to admit that I am as alive as it is, and my most hideous discovery is that I am as alive as it is, I shall have to raise my consciousness of life outside to so high a point that it would amount to a crime against my personal life. For the profound morality that I felt before, my morality was the desire to understand, and since I didn't understand, I shuffled things around. That was only yesterday. And now that I discovered that I have always been profoundly moral, I admit only of finality. As for my prior profound morality, for me to discover that I am as crudely alive as that bare light that I learned of yesterday. As for that morality of mine, the harsh glory of being alive is horror itself. I lived before of a humanized world. Did the simply alive destroy the morality that I had then? A world wholly alive has a hellish power. End of the first chapter. The Passion According to G.H. by Clarice Lispector. Read by Ygor Raduy.